My name is Huston. The projection was that the facilities in New York, if this is approved and LNG comes to New York, will be transportation fueling stations. And the sort of motion of these regulations is based on that. Why do the regulations not limit themselves to such facilities, rather than, as I understand them, they would also then be what would be used to regulate, let's say, a major export facility that was a very different kettle of fish?
So the reason is we're drafting a regulation to conform with the law. So the law sets out what the regulation has to cover, and the law does not have any restriction on the size or type of facilities. The projections are just those. We asked what are the types of facilities most likely to be built in New York State if the regulation is promulgated, and the answer was in the next 5 years, the most likely facilities that you'll see are transportation related. But the law and the regulation is broader than that.
So, under the law, my understanding is that you could draft, you can only draft regulations in conformance with the law, and that the law is broad, but you could draft regulations that were more narrow. You cannot go broader than the law, but you could go more narrow than the law. So you could draft regulations that simply addressed small-scale transportation facilities, correct?
That's correct. We don't see a reason.
I understand. We do. And the other aspect I would ask you is, we've learned a lot since that law. That was a long time ago. I was already working on it, but it was a long time ago. We have now become significantly concerned about global climate change. Our governor says that we will be a leader in trying to deal with that issue, and we have reasons to be given Sandy and other things that have happened. I'm sure the law did not ask CEC to address global climate change in drafting these regulations, but it would seem that today we would want that to be a part of the analysis, and it's absent. There can be a glib look at, gee, as there has been, let's say, between coal and frac gas. A glib look saying that you burn one and burn the other one clean. Yes, it does. But life cycle analysis is not so clear what the benefits is. So why has there not been an assessment of global impact?
Right. So a lot of the questions that are coming up today have to do with legitimate national policy issues on energy.
State policy issues.
On how it's produced and how it's used. This particular regulation doesn't go that broadly. Our job is only to do what this law says, which is provide a process for firms to get issues so that they can store LNG. So although the national policy issue is a legitimate issue, it's not relevant to this particular regulation.
And held similarly?
Sorry?
Held packed similarly?
I think that's right. The way the law is structured and the way we structure regulation is to accomplish the task that was sent to DEC, which is to create a permitting program for facilities to store LNG. That is a little bit of our scope. And although the national policy issue is legitimate, it isn't relevant to this particular regulation. This regulation has no provision regarding production or energy uses. There's no policy issues like that in the regulation. It isn't meant to address that question.
But I think that's one of our concerns, is that it has policy implications.
I appreciate that.
And therefore, it would seem as though they must be a part of the process. And so I think that's one of the reasons we're taking some exception, is if you take this as a separate little thing, I can see your point of view, but it's not.
We're hearing that loud and clear. We fully understand that there's concerns and reasonable issues to discuss on the national and state policy level regarding energy production and use. Right now, we are in a situation where we're providing information on a particular regulation that could be considered to be part of the issue, but from our perspective, it's really quite tangential. So you will certainly be receiving comments to that effect. We will do our best to respond to those comments, and certainly our executive and our governor's office is listening, and will be in conversation about that. And they know full well that this is connected to that national policy and state policy discussion. So all I want to say is that we hear you on that. This regulation, from our perspective, is very limited in scope. I understand. Sir.
Hi, my name is John Armstrong. I grew up in a small town in Huston, Washington. It's a town of around 802 people. One thing I'm very concerned about, and I've seen first-party representation, are the emergency workers, first responders, EMTs, firefighters. Those people who call on to deal with disasters, an explosion or fire. We all use that balance of firefighters. The various equipment. My question comes down to the role of the Department of Transportation throughout these regulations, the creation of regulations, and the enforcement of the regulations could be included. As I understand it, the LNG transportation should be regulated by the Department of Transportation. There's an ECL section 23, 17, 13. By DEC taking over these regulations and expressly and broadly creating them and creating a platform by which the LNG can be transported in the state regulatory platform, seems that the Department of Transportation should be excluded from this process, that they should inherently be regulated and expressly further in order that those first responders, the health and safety codes related to that, the fire, the notification, the route planning, is all part of the Department of Transportation expertise and purview, but by the DEC taking over this regulatory creation, it's overreaching and exempting much of that safety and planning process that should be there. So my question comes down to this: why is the Department of Transportation not more forward and in front of these regulations in this entire process? And secondarily, what role are they taking in crafting these regulations today?
So excellent. The main thing to clarify is that this regulation does nothing to impede or in any way alter all of the requirements that are in place for the transportation of flammable fuels like LNG.
We'll get into that next part.
Yeah, he's going to be talking some more about that in a minute. So it's very helpful to clarify that this is not a matter of these regulations superseding other regulations that are already in place. Not at all. What we're making about DOT is that the law says that DOT should certify the route that LNG takes when moved from one point of the state to another point of the state. DOT's reaction to that is that is not something that they do for any hazardous material. They're not equipped to do that, and they're not intending to do it for LNG. The implication is that for New York State, essentially all of the supply of LNG for LNG facilities has to come from out of state. But this regulation will do nothing to impede existing safety requirements for transportation of flammable materials.
DOT says they're not able to certify route transportation. Wouldn't that suggest that they shouldn't have to happen? DOT cannot certify.
No, it's a matter that they don't think it's necessary. Because of all these other requirements that are already in place, particularly on the federal level. There's many federal requirements for the transportation of hazardous materials. And the state has determined that they don't need to go beyond that.
Where is that the route transportation state planning? You have LNG transportation first. It's not like transporting goods.
Right. So there's two parts to that. One is what are going to be the requirements for ensuring that LNG, like other hazardous materials, are transported safely? The answer is the whole list of existing federal, state, and local requirements for that action. None of those change. And all that's happening now. LNG is traveling through the state now routinely, as all hazardous materials are, except LNG is in a much smaller quantity than petroleum. So that's all happening every day. We're experiencing it all the time. Regarding emergency preparedness, that is why we are enlisting the experts of the Office of Fire Prevention and Control so that when people submit a permit application to DEC, we are requiring as part of the regulation, they give us very detailed analysis of local capabilities. That will be reviewed by the experts at OFTC who will tell us whether or not it's adequate or not. If it's not adequate, the law requires that the applicant provide the necessary training, personnel, and equipment to the local responders so they can do what's necessary. So that has to be cost neutral to the municipality, so there isn't any additional cost to the muni. So that's very well structured in the regulation in the law.
And with the Office of Fire and Safety, are they, do you think, adequately, going to be adequate to look at that transportation aspect of the transportation role?
I would say that state and federal departments of transportation have a greater role with the transportation aspect. And my understanding is that those requirements have been in place, continue to be in place in New York and across the country.
Thank you.
Good question.
Hi there. So I just have a point of order, and then I have a question. My point of order is that I believe this meeting is completely out of order. And the reason for that is because I believe it's pretty, just seems obvious to me that this activity has environmental consequences. That means that it's a significant event of seeker. And unless you have scoped these regulations at scoping hearings, it is completely inappropriate to do regulations without doing scope, because the scoping might, there might be, if you go through the secret process, one of the alternatives is a no action alternative, meaning basically, let's keep this stuff banned. So until you've done scoping hearings, this proceeds is out of order. I'm not an attorney, but I'm guessing that if you go through the regulations, probably DEC is probably going to suffer a lawsuit, just guessing. Okay, so my question is, I just learned about the Cambrian mass extinction about 1.5 million years ago, and the reason why 95% of all life on planet, human, plant, dinosaurs, whatever, 95% of all life died. The reason was because the global concentration of CO2, this volcanic event, caused these methane hydrates that were frozen to evaporate suddenly. There was a rapid change in the environment, and it caused climate to change rapidly. 95% of all life on the planet died. So, what I think is happening here is this whole, it's fracking, it's tar sands, it's all of it. This whole methane, hydrocarbon, fossil, it is a fossil economy. It's drives us extinct along with the dinosaurs. So I would just, my question is, do these regulations take into account the severity of our action with regards to climate change? Thank you.
Hi. On your question about the propriety process and seeker analysis. First of all, every facility that ever applies for a permit under this program, if you want to regs and finalize, will go through a full secure review. To the extent that there's any adverse impacts, they will be reviewed on that at that time during the permit application process. If there's need for an environmental impact statement, and at that point that'll happen.
You're saying the potential exists to issue permits before there's an environmental review?
No, that's what I'm saying. Case by case basis at time to do after these regs, if and when they are finalized. In the promulgation of the regulations, which is a separate action that the DEC is taking, the state agency, we have looked at the seeker issues, and we have issued it. You'll see it in the papers if you look through them. There's a negative declaration on the seeker finding. We don't think there are adverse environmental impacts connected with
So that finding statement, and you declare there's a negative declaration.
Yes, it's in the papers.
No environmental reviews necessary, no EIS necessary.
There's no EIS necessary for the rulemaking process, that's right, but it will be on a case-by-case basis for any facility that ever gets permitted.
But why would you go through the effort of generating regulations if the outcome of the secret procedure might be no action alternative, meaning keep this bad shit banned?
Well,
I would ask us to maintain decorum while we do have this discussion. Thank you. Ma'am.
I have a short question. First, how many DEC engineers and staff people will oversee this program?
The way this program will work is that the permitting process will be centralized in Albany because of the specialized nature of it. But the inspection of facilities will be distributed throughout the state.
So do you have a number?
Of
How many will oversee?
how many inspectors, for example?
Engineers and staff.
Oh. Maybe about 20.
That would be somewhat determined by the number of applications and permits issued, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm thinking primarily those who would be involved in inspecting facilities. In terms of reviewing applications, probably less than half a dozen. That would be the case if the projections are accurate. If we're starting to get many more facilities, then that could change.
Second question, were any communities or environmental organizations consulted on that regulation?
Yes, they were in several occasions. We held a stakeholders meeting this past February and invited several environmental organizations. And broadly put out a net and some responses and some did not.
Is there a list of those participants available?
Those who showed up?
Yes.
Yeah, we come up with that. Yep.
I just one more thing, I'm strong with what you said. There is no federal oversight in Pennsylvania on any of these. We've had pipeline explosions, pressure station explosions. Any rural area in New York City, like our rural areas, it's called Class 1 rural, look it up. It went right back into whoever built it. Whoever built the thing that blew up is now back in charge of it. No pins up, no oversight whatsoever. We thought that would happen last year when we had an explosion and fire at the Mayfair compressor station. No, everyone came and everyone left, no jurisdiction. He said, who's in charge? Williams, who built it, was in charge. And that has happened 5 times. No, the federal government provides no oversight. The state had better figure out what their oversight is. That's the question is, are you really aware that, or have you been given that information from the federal government coming in? Because if I was you, I'd call PEMSA, I'd call FERC, I'd call everyone, you'll find out. No, you build it in New York, you deal with it in New York. So this whole thing of bait switch, telling somebody else in charge, we're really used to that. Going around a circle, it's like a circular fire training for us.
So that's not what we said. What we did was we answered the question regarding what are the requirements in place for safe transportation of LNG. And we referred to the federal and state requirements that are on the books for how that's done. We didn't talk at all about oversight. And we don't want to diminish again. There are national policy issues at stake here. Frankly, we're not talking about those issues today. And I understand that you want to talk about those and you can, but it's not part of the scope of the
We're talking about populated areas in class 5, 4, and 3. Rural is 2 and 1. As soon as you get to 2 and 1, there is no regulatory authority. Zero. Besides the people that want to operate the facility. And now I'll get to my next one, I mentioned earlier. Are you aware of who is installing all of these liquefied natural gas stations in the United States right now? China. They already right here. They're investing $1 billion in putting in these stations all over the United States. There is a statement in this article, this is from Reuters. A source close to the situation said the company has just tested the market, call it an experiment. As for the secrecy around its plans, the source said, E&E Group is mindful of potential U.S. reaction to its expansion there because it will bring in more competition. We'll have no comment on its ownership structure or makeup of the board of directors. The company says that not able to comment on behalf of the E&E Group, efforts to reach E&E Group in China were more successful. I don't know about you folks in the room, and I'm hoping you feel the same way. If you're going to voice this on us, anywhere in the United States or in New York State, which will not be doing, as far as I'm concerned, but we can try. We're not interested in having more foreign involvement in it. I don't want foreign companies doing things to go boom and blow up entire neighborhoods. So I would hope that that's under consideration. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate the questions because I know that information maybe provide us like more
And there will be other backgrounds, questions that are continuing.
That's my comment, my question. When you look at the current ownership that's going on right now, I have forwarded a press release stating Thursday, September 26th, from the DEC. It says, DEC proposes a liquefied natural gas regulation that would be safe and environmental and beneficial to New York. That's your press release. I think we can all appreciate that there's a fine line between providing public information about meeting propaganda. So I have a concern that maybe that line has been crossed. When I read this press release, it talks about one type of facility. It says that DEC expects more of the early permits to be issued for smaller facilities. And so you're talking about the hauling of fuel and trucks and stuff. I guess my question, this is a form of question, is do you think it's appropriate to issue public statements that fail to identify the other type of facilities that would be permitted if these rules are promulgated, such as the import-export terminals, the peak shaving plants, the regional LNG production facilities, the LNG production of natural gas wells, the LNG production facilities with access to natural gas pipelines. All of those are identified in the Liquid Impact Statement. Don't say a word about it in the press. So that's my question. Do you think that's appropriate?
Again, what we did try to understand, to be able to answer that question, what kind of facilities can we expect? We had a projection completed, and the answer to that was in the next 5 years, we expect small fueling facilities. And that's why the press release says, this is what we expect. The press release says that's all we're going to permit, but that's all that regulation covers. If that impression came through, then that was on our part, how that was crafted. But the regulation generally addresses all types of facilities and all capacities. What the projections show is that we expect none of those types of facilities like shaving. And as far as export, this regulation would be subject to requirements for FERC. So we don't have to go through FERC issuing any permits for an offshore facility. But it's actually a question whether this regulation will apply in that situation, and whether FERC would have and then goes to Coast Guard.
I understand that in the first 5 years, it's probably likely that facilities will be permitted with these small facilities. However, I think I'm saying that these rules don't last just 5 years. They're beyond 5 years. So we're concerned about that. Sure. That's my point on that side. The other question I have is that I noticed that when you talked about the moratorium that existed, and you stated that there's also a moratorium right now in New York City, I'm wondering why you did not say that moratorium ends in 2015. That's just right. That's true. It actually comes up every two years. That law comes before the legislature. The legislature makes a decision. And every 2 years since 1999, they have elected to continue it on a 2-year basis. That's their prerogative. So my question would be, if it's possible that in 2015, New York City is going to also be able to liquefy natural gas, don't you think it's appropriate that maybe a public hearing, public meeting occur in New York City, especially knowing what happened in that time, that the people of New York City is given the opportunity to talk about this and to present their concerns and ask questions?
Right. The other point to note is that New York City itself has say in that. And they have their own requirements. And if the legislature lives in New York City moratorium, New York City could elect to maintain theirs. That would be their decision.
I understand. Again, if these rules are promulgated and moratorium is in 2015, the people of New York City will be subjected to the same rules as everybody else. And so, to me, it only makes sense that that's a big population that we should have. Understood.
I much rather writing my talking, so pardon me if I say a little bit nervous. I've looked through the regulations. I also looked at the national fire standards, because I was trying to find anything that would put my mind at ease with the word location that was on one of your first slides. So I think it's appropriate to ask the question about location. I don't know a whole bunch about everything. I do know that all of my life I have felt that my state and the state departments were looking out for me and my children. Right now at Lake Seneca, the north part of the lake, there's an expansion of a huge landfill site. It's not that the state is making more of the solid waste because of what's coming from the wells that surround our state. At the southern part of Lake Seneca, Energy is going to use the vacant salt cabinet for storing the gas. There's another company, as you know of, that's applied for a permit for the LNG transfer station, fueling stations that are there. And the reason I'm asking about the question about siting is right in the middle of those. There are 3 children's camps right at the point of the lake where there is an angle turn. It's closer to energy than the landfill. But to get to both of these, because the landfill is connected to this, there is one railroad track, there is one road. There are 3 camps located down on the water with no exit except one road, narrow, that goes past a city landfill, little one with the gas coming out, across the railroad track that will be heavily increased with train traffic up to Route 14, which will be one of the traffic routes where these dangerous trucks will be. And my question, which other people have talked about with the firemen and the escape, how will you evacuate at this one of the 3 camps? There's a minimum of 300 children and staff members there all summer. It's a conference center. It is used during all 12 months. I would like to know how you're going to justify locating this and putting these children who come to a camp in such a dangerous situation. And I don't see anything in the regulations that refers to some very exceptional things. And when I see that the liquid natural gas facility already has a permit in progress, it tells me that you guys don't know that there's 3 children's camps there. And there is no way in the nation that any local fire department or emergency group are going to be able to get those kids up the road, past the tracks, and out to Route 14 before there is an explosion. And I can see the news article and the headline now. And what you're permitting needs to take guard this. So these companies that come in don't purchase and buy land and property with that use, because they always know the regulations are saying any located near any place where there's children that are in danger, it will not be permitted. I'm right.
That's certainly a concerning issue, but that's really not, as I understand it, related to LNG. That's a gas storage project along Seneca Lake. It's not connected with liquefied natural gas. That's a separate issue.
More generally, you could ask to talk about location.
We are, and that's moving on to our next part of our presentation. We are going to talk about how to relate to where these locations will be chosen or not for facilities.
Could I ask the 2 gentlemen at the mics to hold their questions until the next round? It will come up in a few minutes, so we can continue through. I know you've been very patient.
As long as I get to be first.
Well, you guys will be first. Is that all right, sir? Thank you.